There is something I must reveal to you, something I whispered in fragments through years of analysis, something hidden beneath layers of clinical observations and theoretical frameworks. A truth that I could not speak plainly while walking among the living, for it would have shattered too many carefully constructed illusions. The empath, yes, you who reshape your essence to accommodate others' pain, has become the hunted in a game you never agreed to play. Not by accident, not by mere circumstance, but by the very architecture of the unconscious itself, the fragmented soul. In my decades of exploration, I spoke frequently of the shadow, that which you banish, disown, or dread within yourself. But I did not speak with sufficient clarity about what transpires when a person becomes so fused with luminosity, with nurturing, with endless compassion, that they can no longer recognize their own capacity for necessary darkness. Such a person is not complete. They are fragmented, and a fragmented soul becomes prey. An empath, in the most authentic sense, is someone whose psychic defenses were compromised in their earliest years. Perhaps your mother's anguish became your burden before you could speak in complete thoughts. Perhaps your father's withdrawal devoured your spontaneous joy. Or perhaps you were born into a dwelling where fury prowled behind locked doors, and you learned, like an oracle gifted with foresight, to sense the tempest before the first drop of rain fell. These are not merely recollections. They are psychic wounds. They form the foundation of the wounded archetype I have come to warn you about today. The compassionate martyr who does not understand that their empathy is a strategy for survival. The healer who mistakes mending others for being worthy of love. The mystic who dissolves into pain as a ritual of acceptance. Do you not understand? To absorb everything is not a blessing when you cannot return what does not belong to you. To soak up the emotions of others without transformation is to suffocate in borrowed anguish. And there are forces, human and otherwise, that sustain themselves upon this very phenomenon. They are not always malevolent in the traditional sense, but they are parasitic in the psychological realm. They seek your radiance not to honor it, but to devour it. What society labels a narcissist I understood as the psychic predator, though such terminology lacked academic respectability in my time. These beings, often charismatic, magnetic, or wounded themselves, are unconsciously magnetized to empaths because you provide what they cannot generate from within: validation, attention, containment of their inner chaos. You become a mirror that reflects them as whole even when they are shattered. And the moment you shatter, they seek new reflections elsewhere. You must comprehend that the unconscious is not individual. It is collective. Your anguish is ancient. Your compulsion to rescue is not solely yours. It is the inheritance of the animal when she drifts without anchor, or the wounded child archetype who still believes love must be purchased through suffering. The empath becomes the target when they refuse to acknowledge the hunter within themselves. I do not speak of external aggression, but of the sharp discernment that comes only when you integrate the shadow. Until you do, your kindness will not shield you. It will mark you. It will make you visible to those who feast upon unguarded light. The Zurich patient. A case study. A patient once visited me in Zurich. She described being overwhelmed by melancholy every time she entered her workplace. The artificial lighting, the conversations, even the plants in their pots triggered her anxiety. But what disturbed her most was her inability to distinguish where her emotions ended and others began. She felt like a vessel absorbing grief, rage, shame without choice, without filter. I instructed her to pay attention to her dreams. She returned with a vision of standing in a cathedral, barefoot, sweeping ashes from the stone floor. As she swept, more ashes fell from the sky like snow, covering her, blinding her. In the dream, she wept, not from terror, but from the futility of her task. "To whom do the ashes belong?" I asked her. "To everyone," she replied. And who appointed you as the sweeper? She paused, understanding dawning. I did. I believed it would serve some purpose. Ah, there it was, the archetype of the empath as the eternal cleanser, the one who processes what no one else dares to confront. But this is not holiness. This is self-annihilation. You must ask yourself, who profits from your exhaustion? Who flourishes when you forget your own needs? What systems, psychological or social, depend upon your silence, your softness, your self-denial? And deeper still, what part of you has become addicted to being indispensable? I tell you now, if your identity is constructed upon being the emotional caretaker of others, you are not liberated. You are enslaved. And where there is enslavement, there is shadow. Where there is shadow, there is the key to your freedom, if only you have the courage to look. The fear of wholeness. But most empaths fear to look. Why? Because looking means admitting that you too possess the capacity for withdrawal, for anger, for refusing to be touched. It means dismantling the myth that your value stems from how much suffering you can contain. It means stepping out of the role of perpetual healer and confronting the terrifying possibility that you are permitted to be whole without bleeding. The path to wholeness is not paved with sacrifice alone. It is paved with self-knowledge, with confrontation, with boundaries drawn not in fear, but in reverence for your soul. I do not ask you to become cold. That is not integration. It is suppression. I ask you to become conscious. Conscious of when your empathy transforms into compulsion. Conscious of the archetype you embody when you agree with trembling lips and a fracturing heart. Conscious of when your light is being harvested by someone who offers you nothing but hunger in return. When I declare that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, I meant that light without shadow is blindness. To be fully human is to embrace paradox. The empath must embrace not only their gift of feeling, but their right to not feel, to choose to say no. I once had a dream. In it, I walked through a forest and discovered a deer lying in the moss. It was luminous, trembling, radiant in its vulnerability. As I approached, I saw that it was dying, not from a wound, but from overexposure. Its glow had attracted every predator in the forest, and none had left a mark. They had simply gazed, absorbed, drained, and the deer, unable to dim its light, had offered itself unconsciously to death. This is what becomes of the unprotected empath. You do not need claws to defend yourself, but you do need depth. You need the animus, your inner fire. You need the warrior archetype not to conquer others, but to guard the sanctuary of your own psyche. Some of you have already begun to stir. You are dreaming of masks, of houses with broken doors, of mirrors that show faces not your own. These are not random. These are summons. The house is your psychic structure. The mask is the persona you constructed to survive. The mirror is the shadow calling you home. Reclaiming your soul. Do not wait for others to grant you permission. The unconscious does not negotiate with politeness. It demands honesty, brutal, luminous honesty. You may lose relationships. You may be called selfish, cold, changed, but that is the price of reclaiming your soul. And what is your soul worth? It is worth everything. Let us now descend deeper, for the surface is already trembling. You who have carried others in silence, who have felt emotions with such intensity, they seem to penetrate your very essence. There is something you must understand. The world is not merely physical. Beneath all relationships, all exchanges, all glances and gestures exists a subtle economy of energy. In this invisible marketplace, the empath is both the giver and the unknowing sacrifice. To exist as an empath without initiation is to bleed mystically. Most do not realize they are leaking. Their tears feel natural. Their anxiety is dismissed as sensitivity. Their fatigue is blamed on insomnia or demanding schedules, but they are leaking because they have become conduits, not vessels, for other people's unconscious material. They absorb projections like sponges in a haunted sea, without form, without filter, without fire. But this sensitivity was not given to you to make you suffer. It was given to make you see. You are the early dreamers of the tribe, the ones who sense the drought before the river runs dry, the ones who wake with perspiration and visions, speaking of wolves before anyone hears a howl. Yet, what was once a gift becomes a curse when not protected. When a person unconsciously identifies with the archetype of the wounded healer, they believe their suffering must serve others. They offer themselves endlessly, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear that without being useful, they will not be seen. This fear is not modern, it is ancient. It is a psychic wound passed down through generations, ancestral guilt, inherited trauma, cultural demands. It forms what I call a complex, an autonomous cluster of psychic content that lives within the psyche like a parasite, feeding on the ego's illusions and growing stronger every time the individual repeats the pattern without awareness. And so the empath finds herself repeating, drawn to the same wounded lovers, attracted to the same draining friendships, magnetized by suffering, believing each time will be different. Not knowing the pattern is not personal but archetypal. This is why you must study your dreams. In the dream world, the unconscious speaks without censorship. There you may see yourself trying to board a train with too many bags or drowning while others watch. You may see a child knocking at a door no one opens. These are not random stories. These are messages. The overpacked bags represent your burdened psyche. The drowning is your emotional absorption. The child is your abandoned self, still knocking. I once analyzed the dream of a man who described himself as pathologically compassionate. In his dream, he was in a hospital with hundreds of patients, trying to help them all. But each time he cured one, 3 more arrived. The hospital grew darker, more suffocating, until he collapsed in the hallway, unseen. When he woke, he said, "I think I'm meant to help more." I said, "No. You're meant to help yourself." Boundaries, the doors to self. Empaths confuse empathy with enmeshment. They think merging with another's pain is compassion, but true compassion requires distance. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors, and doors can open and close. An empath with no door becomes a haunted house. And what haunts you? Not demons, not spirits, but unintegrated parts of your own psyche. The aggressor you repressed, the selfish voice you silenced, the rage you deemed unholy. These rejected selves do not disappear. They become shadow, and shadow always seeks expression. Do you know why some empaths attract abusers? Because the repressed predator within must manifest somewhere. When you deny your own power, your psyche will project it onto others. You will find yourself surrounded by takers, dominators, manipulators. Not because you are cursed, but because your soul is demanding you reclaim the part of you that can say, "Enough." To integrate the shadow is not to become cruel. It is to become whole. I have seen too many people confuse empathy with purity. But there is no purity in self-abandonment. There is no holiness in allowing your soul to be a feeding ground for the emotionally hungry. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to become conscious. And consciousness begins with individuation. Individuation is the process by which you become who you truly are. Not who your parents wanted, not who your culture shaped, not who your pain made, but who your soul remembers. For the empath, individuation begins the moment you realize you are not responsible for the emotions of others. It is a radical act. It is not loud, but it is seismic. To say, "I feel your pain, but I will not carry it." To say, I see your suffering, but I will not drown in it. To say, I choose to feel myself now. These are declarations of awakening. You might lose people. Let them go. You may feel guilt. Let it pass. You may ache with unfamiliar silence. Let it teach you. The empath is not meant to be empty. The empath is meant to be sovereign. Imagine now the archetype of the alchemist. Not the physical one with fire and metals, but the psychic one, the inner magician who transforms poison into gold. This archetype lives within you. It does not deny pain, it transmutates it. But it can only begin its work when the vessel is sealed. That vessel is your boundary. Without it, transformation cannot occur, only contamination. So the empath must become the alchemist, not the victim, not the sponge, not the savior. You must learn to hold energy without becoming it, to walk into a room without absorbing its ghosts, to listen without merging, to feel without fracturing. How? By returning to the body. The empath often lives in the etheric, in the realm of intuition, emotion, vision, but they forget the body, the temple of the self, the grounding rod of consciousness. When you are disconnected from your body, you have no filter. You are an open system. Every pain becomes yours. But when you anchor into your body, when you breathe deeply, sit with your spine straight, feel your feet on the earth, you create a boundary not just of skin, but of soul. The unconscious respects embodiment. It does not flow where it is not welcomed. This is why rituals matter. Grounding by walking barefoot, saying no aloud, journaling your anger, drawing circles around your bed with intention. These are not superstitions. They are symbolic affirmations of psychic structure, and the unconscious responds to symbol far more than logic. Do not underestimate the power of saying aloud, "This is not mine." It is an invocation, a declaration, a reclaiming, because the truth is, much of what you feel is not yours. You have simply never been taught to distinguish. But now you must learn, because the time of unconscious empathy is over. The age of sacrificial light is ending. The new empath is not a martyr. The new empath is a mirror, clear, grounded, fierce with self-knowledge. You do not bend to energy. Energy bends to you. You are no longer food. You are fire. There is a quiet revolution happening within you, and you know it. The soul of the empath is not weak. No, it is powerful, so powerful, in fact, that others unconsciously draw near it not only for comfort, but for possession. And this is where the danger truly lies, when your light becomes a refuge for others, but a prison for yourself. You must understand that the unconscious is not content to lie dormant. It longs for recognition. And if you do not bring your unconscious into awareness, it will project outward. It will find a mirror. Often that mirror will be another human being who embodies everything you repress. They may be controlling, harsh, selfish, and you will be drawn to them not despite this, but because of it. This is a principle of psychic compensation. For every empath who cannot say no, there is a tyrant waiting to test them. For every empath who fears taking space, there is a dominator who takes too much. These people are not your enemies. They are the messengers of your shadow. But if you do not recognize the message, you will repeat the pattern endlessly. You will call it fate or trauma or karma. But really, it is simply the unconscious crying out, "Please see me. Please stop abandoning yourself." I once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is most profoundly true for the empath, for you live in a state of over-identification with the other. You confuse intuition with anxiety. You confuse compassion with codependency. You confuse love with self-erasure. Archetypes of the wounded empath. Let us return now to the archetypes, for it is there that the ancient truths reside. There is the archetype of the mother, not the literal mother, but the inner principle of nurturance. When this archetype is wounded, the empath becomes over-mothering. You smother others with your care, not realizing that underneath is a secret hunger to be mothered yourself. But the world does not give easily to those who give without asking, and so you pour yourself empty, waiting for someone to fill you in return. But that is not love. That is depletion. There is the archetype of the priestess, the one who channels the divine, who listens, who heals. But when the priestess is disconnected from her own sacred center, she becomes a servant to unworthy gods. She sacrifices her vitality to false idols, be it the approval of others or the illusion of peace. And then there is the archetype of the orphan. This one lives in so many empaths. The orphan carries a wound of abandonment, a haunting belief that no one will come, and so you come for everyone. You arrive early, you stay late, you hold others through the night, and you do it hoping, praying that one day someone will do the same for you. But as long as you operate from this wound, you will be used, not because the world is cruel, but because you are not yet whole. Do not mistake usefulness for worth. You are not here to be useful. You are here to be true. And truth is fierce. It does not bend. It does not beg. It does not shrink to avoid offense. The truth of the empath is that your sensitivity is sacred, but it is not enough. It must be forged, tempered, guided by discernment. Without discernment, sensitivity becomes chaos. It becomes a sea in which you drown, and so you must learn the difference between resonance and reaction. When someone enters a room and you feel unsettled, do not rush to absorb their pain. Pause. Ask, is this mine or is it a projection? Is it an invitation to heal or a test to transgress my boundary? There is a subtle line between healing and harm, and it is marked by consent. No one has the right to pour their darkness into you without your agreement. No one has the right to treat your body, your time, your spirit as a sponge. But if you do not know your limits, you will not defend them. You will allow intrusion and call it connection. You will allow emotional theft and call it empathy. This must end. I say this not in anger, but in urgency. The world is shifting. The energies around us are quickening. The unconscious is rising, collectively, fiercely, violently at times, and those who are sensitive, those who are porous, will be swept away unless they anchor deeply into themselves. The new empath is not soft, they are sovereign. The new empath does not only listen, they speak. The new empath does not only feel, they choose. The new empath does not only absorb, they reflect. And in this transformation there is grief. Yes, grief for the roles you must release. You must bury the healer who heals to be loved. You must bury the lover who gives to avoid abandonment. You must bury the child who cries out silently, hoping someone will read their pain and rescue them. These identities have served you. They were survival strategies. But they are not your essence. They are masks worn by your deeper self, who waits now patiently for you to come home. Home is not another person. It is not a role. It is not a performance. It is the moment you say, I will no longer betray myself to be loved. In that moment, your nervous system may quake, your mind may scream, the old wounds will rise like ghosts, begging to be soothed the old way, through sacrifice. Do not answer them. Do not feed them. Stand. Stand inside the temple of your own heart and say, I am enough. Even when I do nothing, I am enough. Say, I do not exist to be consumed. Say, I am not here to rescue anyone. Say, I am free. This is individuation. This is the path of the awakened empath, not the one who loses themselves in others, but the one who touches the soul of another and still returns to their own body. The new empath is not a victim. They are a mirror of the unconscious made conscious. They are the alchemists of emotional tides. They are the dreamer who wakes in the dream and says, "This is my life, and I will no longer sleepwalk through it." They are no longer food, they are fire. Let us now walk into the innermost sanctuary of this truth, for you are ready. To be an empath is not a mistake. It is not a disorder. It is not a weakness to be eradicated. It is a sacred configuration of the psyche, a heightened antenna tuned to the vibrations beneath words, to the signals hidden behind smiles, to the grief encoded in glances. But like all sacred things, it demands reverence. It demands structure. It demands that you become the guardian of your own threshold. Do you know what happens when the empath becomes conscious? They become dangerous. Not in violence, but in truth. They walk into a room and no longer dim their radiance to protect fragile egos. They speak with clarity, not apology. They hold space for others, but not at the expense of their soul. And those who once fed on their silence tremble, because the empath has remembered that their light is not for sale. But this remembering is not sudden. It is a journey. And every journey of transformation is a death. You must die to who you were, to the person who said yes to every cry, even as your own voice went unheard, to the version of you that wore compassion like armor, fearing that without it you would be discarded, to the savior, the sacrificer, the silent bearer of other people's chaos. These identities were not false. They were necessary once, but now they are too small. They cannot contain the soul that is emerging from beneath your skin. The new you is not wide open. They are wide awake. You will still feel deeply, but your feelings will no longer be codependent. You will still love fully, but your love will no longer come from starvation. You will still give, but only from the overflow, not from the wound. The empath's final initiation. The empath's final initiation is into power, not domination, not control, but power in the truest, deepest sense. The power to choose, to protect, to walk away. The power to say, "I will not carry what is not mine." The power to meet another's suffering without sacrificing your own sanity. In this way, you become a sacred mirror. You reflect truth without distortion. You offer presence, not absorption. You offer insight, not enmeshment. You offer love, not addiction. This is what the world needs, not more bleeding hearts, not more spiritual martyrs, but conscious empaths who have integrated their shadow, who have stared into their own rage and not flinched, who have met their inner predator and made peace with its protection, who have walked into the ruins of their own abandonment and built a temple there. You are that temple. Your body is not just flesh. It is a symbol, it is a story, it is soul made visible, guarded not with fear, but with reverence. When your nervous system says no, listen. When your chest tightens in someone's presence, pay attention. When your dreams grow dark and symbolic, do not dismiss them. They are language. They are the voice of the unconscious trying to reach you through the only means it has left. You are not here to carry everyone's suffering. You are here to become a beacon of what happens when someone carries their own. That is the gift you offer this world, your wholeness, not your depletion, your boundaries, not your exhaustion, your truth, not your trauma response. I leave you now with this final truth, etched not in ink but in soul. The empath who does not know their power will be devoured by those who sense it. But the empath who awakens to their power will become the flame that darkness cannot touch. And from that flame, you will burn away all that kept you small. You will rise, not as a sponge, not as a savior, not as a servant to pain, but as a sovereign of light, crowned by shadow, wrapped in selfhood, fully alive. Now go and remember, you were never too much. You were only unguarded. And now you are not. Now you are whole. Please like and subscribe for more content, and comment whole if you overcame the hunters.